This segment of the Alice Stewart Show is brought to you by Aero Plumbing. For all your household or business plumbing needs, call Aero Plumbing at 1-866-PLUMBER or schedule an appointment online at aeroplumbing.net.
Welcome back to the Alice Stewart Show. In the spin room this morning, where we discuss the key issues making headlines across the nation and across the world that were discussed on the Sunday morning talk shows, we are joined with Jim Reavis and Taylor Riddle. He is the Democrat. He is with the Democrat House Caucus here in Arkansas. Taylor and Jim, great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. In this conversation, this first topic on Ferguson, Missouri, has really been something that has galvanized conversations across the country. And as we all know, 18-year-old Michael Brown was killed a little over 2 weeks ago at the hands of an officer, Darren Wilson, there in that town. And it really has prompted tremendous unrest and rioting in the streets. Al Sharpton has come to the town, and Eric Holder, Attorney General Eric Holder, has gone there to ensure and promise the people of Ferguson and the Brown family that justice will be served. While the riots have gone up and down and ebbed and flowed, today the family will put Michael Brown to rest. And his father, Michael Brown Sr., has made an urgent plea to folks in that town that let's have a day of respect for my son every day, but specifically today. Here's Michael Brown Sr.
Tomorrow, all I want is peace while my son is being laid to rest. Can you please take a day of silence so we can lay our son to rest? Please. That's all I ask.
Taylor?
Obviously that's pretty emotional time for him, especially today and over the last 2 weeks. But to see people, primarily from outside of the city of Ferguson, like we had been discussing right before we went on air, to see the violence that has occurred since the shooting, that's heartbreaking, because I don't think that Michael Brown's father wanted crimes to be committed in protest of a crime, nor would he have wanted to see police in riot gear in a community that seems to be pretty quiet otherwise. And, hopefully that there's not just peace today, but there's peace every day after.
Right. Jim?
I couldn't agree more. My heart goes out to the Brown family and the people of Ferguson, who wants to be known as the town of riots. I mean, we should be thinking about the Brown boy and the possibilities that kid could have had.
And we're learning now, as the protests have led to countless arrests and people taken into custody, that a lot of the folks that were in Ferguson and taking part in that unrest, or many of them sought peaceful protests, but a lot of them erupted into violence. The Captain Ron Johnson, who's just been fantastic as a model of the community, he says, look, that doesn't reflect Ferguson. That is not reflective of who we are as a people. And he has been very vocal about calling for peace and justice there. And here is Captain Johnson over the weekend applauding the way the atmosphere has changed, and there is a more calm influence on the streets there. Here's Captain Ron Johnson.
It fills my heart, because this is the youth of Missouri. This is the youth of Ferguson. And this is what should have been shown all the time, not those individuals that were reflective of another side that's not reflective of Ferguson.
Jim?
I can agree more with the captain's statements. Ron Johnson's from Ferguson. He knows his people. He's been around those people. He knows their character. I just hope that he can, through his leadership, help bring some stability to the area, and to make sure that that they actually have the protest that he was at was the perfect example of how a protest should be. I think I think with that and his leadership, I think that he's a great guy.
Yeah, Taylor.
I think that definitely he's done a tremendous job in trying to keep the city of Ferguson peaceful during this tumultuous time. But there's one thing that I guess that I really appreciate from the captain's leadership, and it is his willingness to allow people to express their concerns with not just necessarily this particular instance where people felt that police force was used when it should not have been, but also the tensions that have occurred over the last few years with other circumstances regarding police officers and how they've dealt with civilians as citizens of this country. And, I think it's a discussion that he is willing to allow to take place and show that police officers aren't there to be a military force. They're there to try to maintain peace and to protect our citizens and civilians. And I think that he's done a good job in trying to be a role model law enforcement officer, be an officer that we can be proud of and appreciate his leadership.
And while all of that is going on, the protests and the call for calm and peace, there is the all-important legal process here where we have Darren Wilson, the officer, is going through the grand jury process, and there are some elected officials in Missouri who are calling on Governor Jay Nixon to remove the prosecutor from this. McCullough is the prosecutor in that town, and his father was killed at the hands of an African-American 50 years ago, and there are a lot of elected officials who want to see McCullough removed from the case. And Governor Jay Nixon was on Meet the Press yesterday, and he says that he does believe and has confidence that McCullough can remain impartial in this case.
First of all, you have an elected prosecutor. He should do his job, do his duty as the Attorney General, as will, quite frankly, do their duties. I think you focus on making sure that they live up to the high standards that are out there, making sure that they get all the information so that justice can be served.
Jim?
Quite frankly, I agree with Jay Nixon. I mean, Bob McCullough has been elected repeatedly by the people of his district, and I think that that he will be able to do the professional job that he needs to do. But I also don't want to get the cart before the horse. Jay Nixon also said on CBS this weekend that he wasn't sure that the grand jury would prosecute the officer. We need to make sure that we get all the facts out before we start jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, that's let the grand jury process work its way. Taylor, your thoughts on that?
I agree 100% about allowing the grand jury to review the facts and to establish whether or not there is precedence to move forward with trying to convict the officer, because we necessarily do not know every detail, or I don't, not confidently enough to accuse the officer of doing something criminally. But in regards to the prosecutor, attorneys all the time take on cases that they necessarily may not 100% agree with, either defending somebody or even prosecuting someone. But they also take an oath to uphold the laws of this country. And I know the prosecutor has been elected by the people of his district and in Ferguson. And I don't see any reason, even with his father being a victim of a crime, I don't see that that should tarnish his ability to do his job the right way and to do it honorably. But I do agree that we definitely need to let the grand jury review the case and see what they decide.
All right, we're going to leave it there. We'll take a break, and we'll come back with the Spin Room with Taylor Riddle and Jim Reavis. After this segment, we're going to talk about international foreign policy issue with ISIS and the growing threat there. All of that coming up after this. This segment of the Alice Stewart Show brought to you by Aero Plumbing. For all of your household or business plumbing needs, call Aero Plumbing at 1-866-PLUMBER or schedule an appointment online at aeroplumbing.net.